guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new up in this place, my name is Ntwani Ngomane, and if you're a returning subscriber, thank you so much for tuning back and clicking on this video. I know I've been AWOL, guys. It's been so busy. The past 4 weeks have been so busy. I haven't had time to actually sit down, but hopefully it dies down soon and I'll be back, like full time the way we do. Today I'm talking about preparing for APC, or not just APC but throughout your board course. Obviously I am sharing my experience. This is not a formal preparation video or tutorial. You still need to go through the board course, guys. I am not endorsed by Psycha to provide you guys with guidance on how to approach APC, okay? I am just out here trying to share my own experience, the little tricks and things that I did, the things that I now look back on and be like, actually that really helped, or this didn't really work for me. The second thing is that professional competence is not a destination, it's a process. It's something you go through over and over and over and over again for you to get right. So just because I passed the APC doesn't mean my competency stops there. I am still learning with each and every engagement that I go in. I still develop that competence going forward, right? So it's the same thing for you guys. If you are doing a board course, that process that you go through is for you. It's to enhance your professional competencies, right? Another thing before I get into the video is that this video is specifically aimed at people who are going through their APC this year. If you're not going through your APC, it might not really make much sense for you, but if you obviously on the CA part, you will go through this at some point, so you can refer back to the video. Anyway, let's get on to today's video. I have made notes, and today we're going to be talking about the what, right? So in your process, when you begin, you will get a pre-release information, which is basically a case study of a certain company in a certain industry, and they would want you to do certain things, right? So what we're going to discuss in this video is the what. What do you need to work on, or better yet, the triggers and the trigger identification. The how do you identify the triggers in the case study that is set before you, right? I'll be making a lot of reference to the 2020 APC that I wrote, just so it's easier for you guys to get the context and to understand what exactly I'm talking about. So the first thing in identifying triggers, so basically triggers are the what, right? It's the things that you need to do research on. Before you can do anything on a case study, you need to know what you will be working on. So basically this is the process to identify the what. Okay, the first thing is the company or the entity's industry. Every case study that you get will have or will be in a specific industry. They will mostly they explicitly say which industry the case study or the entity that you're given is in. In my case, I haven't come across a situation where I had to sort of think about the industry or like guess that this company could be in this industry. It was always very specific. An example from the 2020 final APC exam pre-release information is they specifically said here, let me just read out for you. The name of the company or the name of the entity was BK, right? So they say BK is a dynamic and evolving business that has grown from 2 employees 20 years ago to now being one of South Africa's largest exporters of avocados, right? So there is your industry. This company is in the avocado industry. It is exporting avocados. It is in the farming business of avocados. So that is your industry. Basically, at large, it is the agriculture industry. So that is how you identify where this case study is. That is very straightforward, to the point, no hassles there. Point number 2 is the financial statements. They will always give you a set of financial statements with every case study. Now, what do you need to do with the financial statements? This is your other leg of the trigger. Your financial statements tell you a lot about the internal environment of the company, and this is now when you now start doing the research, the how, right? But we will get onto that in the next video or so. So the apps will have line items in there, your non-current assets, your liabilities, your equity, your income statement, everything. What you need to know about the apps is how each line item comes into being part of the apps. You know what I mean? So if they say revenue, you need to know high level, how does revenue line item come into the apps? Okay, the entity would have made a sale. They would have met the requirements of IFRS 15. That's why we have that revenue line item, right? So that's how you sort of think about it. The second thing on the apps is that you need to do your movement analysis. So if they will definitely give you the current year balances and the last year's balances, and you need to look at how has these line items moved compared to last year. What are the ratios? Calculate your current ratio, your asset test ratio if it is an inventory intrinsic entity, and then you need to calculate your solvencies, your debt to equity ratio. That will tell you a lot about the entity, but for now that is basically the how. We are still identifying the what. So in your financial statements you need to know the basic line items and how they come to the apps. If you don't understand how a line item comes to be in the apps, then you need to do a little bit of read up on that specific line item. An example of this in the 2020 APC was that there was a line item in the statement of financial position under non-current assets that said bearer plants. Now we've already established that this entity is in the agricultural industry, so there is a line item here which is an asset and they call it bearer plants. How does this come into the financial statements? Now you got to start thinking about IS 41. What does IS 41 say? And that's the thing about professional competence, is that I am pretty sure that most of you have never done IS 41 in your studies, because I've also never done it. It's not in the syllabus. They don't teach us about agricultural standards, right? But when you are in the working environment, you might get a client that is in agriculture, and you need to be able to go and research the standards that apply to that entity. So this was a very nice example of a line item in the apps that we don't normally come across. We don't normally do agriculture, we don't normally see it every day, but it is there, and I needed to get a basic understanding of how bearer plants are accounted for, how they work, and all of that. Another way they can bring a trigger to you is by referencing current events, right? So current events can be anything from political, it can be anything from economical, anything that affects your case study, it affects your entity or your entity's operations. They can bring that up, and then it becomes a trigger because you need to now know something about that current event. If you are not up to date, you need to go and read about it. A classic example of that in the 2020 December APC is this line. They tell us here that there have been threats in recent times by UK restaurants to ban the use of avocados in meals served due to ethical and environmental concerns regarding avocado production. Now, to tell you the truth, I had no idea about threats in the UK with avocados that are exported from South Africa and whatnot. So I needed to go and read up about these threats. What exactly is the problem? What threats have been made, like how this affects the ethical and the environmental concerns regarding avocado products. What are the other environmental concerns of producing avocado? So these are some of the current events that could be there that you need to go and think about, that you need to go and do the work on. The next thing are direct triggers. Now, if you're doing the board course, which I would assume most of you are, they will speak a lot about direct triggers, indirect triggers, and all of that. So basically, your direct triggers are triggers that are there. They're explicit. They have told you that you need to do something about this, right? They are very specifically mentioned in the case study, so it's very difficult for you to miss it. Let me give you guys a practical example of this from, again, the 2020 APC. They say here, I'm particularly concerned that we might not be correctly treating payee, PAYE, on some employees' fringe benefits, right? Already you can hear the tone, you can hear the way the statements sound, they are concerned because of payee implications on fringe benefits. Definitely, your servant's schedule of the income tax comes into play. Do you know what fringe benefits can be given to employees? How should they account for them in terms of payee? You know what I mean? So this becomes a direct trigger. It's very in your face. You can't miss it. So yeah, those are some of the direct triggers that you can get. Another example, but one thing is sure, BK needs to reaffirm its commitment to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. This was not an first trigger, but it's a direct trigger because they're telling you that this company wants to reaffirm their commitment to the Sustainable Development Goals. Now you need to go and read up about the goals. What are the goals? What are the UN goals? You know. So yeah, those are some of the triggers you need to think about. How can the company reaffirm which of the goals actually specifically apply to agriculture? Which of the goals would apply specifically to this entity, or which goals would this entity be very worried about or need to reaffirm? You know, their clients and their stakeholders. So these are some of the direct triggers that you would, they're very in your face. You can't really miss them. The second last thing is indirect triggers. So your indirect triggers are those sneaky little triggers that you're not very sure, is this a trigger, is this not? And it happens a lot because why? It is a learning process, right? You're not competent yet, but you're getting there. So you will have some doubts, you will ask yourself a few questions, but at the end of the day, you will get there. So indirect triggers come up as a result of other analysis. For instance, if you do your financial statement analysis, i.e., you calculate the liquidity ratio and you find that actually this company is not liquid. You get on to calculating the solvency ratio and you realize this company is not solvent. What does that tell you about the company? Is the company struggling? Are they making enough revenue? Are they making enough profit? Are they managing their costs well? How is their cash flow? How is their management at the top? It could speak to many things, right? So these are your indirect triggers. They're not explicit in the case study, but as you do analysis of what is explicit, you get exposed to other things that are happening in the background. An example of this in the 2020 APC is here. So they say here that BK has declared and paid dividends of 20 million in each of the past 3 financial years. Now this can feel or sound like a very stale statement. Okay, sharp, they've paid dividends in the past 3 years. So what's that got to do with me? But you need, in your analysis of the financial statements, you need to have seen, is this company in a liquid position to pay dividends? What does the Companies Act say, right? When can a company pay dividends? Are they solvent? How is their debt to equity ratios? How is their cash flow? Because you can't be paying dividends if you are running low on cash, right? So it brings up so many other factors about and tells you so many things about this company, that if they're paying dividends now, what about the expectation of shareholders? If they can't pay the dividend anymore, what is the implication on that expectation? Their investments as well. So you needed to think about a lot of things. And if they are paying dividends but they don't have the cash flow, they are not liquid, isn't that reckless trading? Think about section 22. You know, it's a lot of things. I could go on but that's what I mean. Like, professional competence is a journey. You're not going to think about these things on day one. I think about them because I've gone through the process. I have specifically spent time and worked on this case study, and I've worked on so many case studies that my competence is a lot better than what it was when I started. So yeah, that's about it. That's the what. That's how you identify triggers. And I think I've gone into a little bit of how to think about them and sort of draft the how can you address them. Another thing in the triggers is ethical dilemmas or ethical issues. The one thing I'm going to say about ethics is that these will never be explicit in a case study. They will never tell you there is an ethical dilemma. As a chartered accountant, you're expected to know that this is an ethical issue, and in that case you need to think of the Companies Act requirements, you need to think of King 4 requirements, you need to think of the APA requirements, the SAICA and the URBA Code of Professional Conduct, right? So that will never be apparent in a case study. They will never tell you that the CEO is involved in some shady dealings. No, you will have to find that out for yourself, and you would have to make an assessment in terms of ethics and the code of conduct on whether that person is ethically is ethical or not, right? So yeah, those are my tips. That is basically how I've come to identify triggers. And disclaimer again, this trigger identification process is not what I used at the beginning. This is what I have accumulated over the process, over the board course, right? So you can use this. It may not be useful to you, but whatever works for you is what you should take, right? I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.